Yes, welcome one, welcome all, welcome to another exciting episode of the General Gaming Show. I am Bridger. I will be your General Gaming for today. We have a great show for you today. Glad you got a hold of the program, however you may have found it. Tell a friend or three or four, won't you? We do have an audio podcast, which the link should be in the show notes of this YouTube video if you're watching it here on YouTube. If not, you'll find it in the past videos that are on the same channel here on YouTube, the Sound Strategy Network channel. And we have, a lot of good stuff to talk about today because we're talking about League of Legends. I mean, we've been dancing around the subject in the past. We mentioned it. We talked about it a little bit on the free-to-play show, but we've never really gotten into and talked about it in earnest on any of the shows we've done here, which is ridiculous because I've been playing it forever, and Freelancer here has been playing it forever in Team Legacy, and Tabret has been playing it forever. Welcome, guys.
How's it going?
Hey.
And
yeah, it's one of those, like, bad habits you can't get rid of.
It really is. I need a 12-step program. It's absurd.
It's so convenient, though.
I told myself that at my 1,000th win I was going to quit. I said, you know what? At 1,000 wins, this game is going to have nothing more to offer me. I'm quitting cold turkey. I think that lasted for like 3 or 4 days.
I remember. And I remember, like, so you're really not going to play anymore? Like, no, not going to do it. All right.
And nothing filled the void. If you stop one habit, you need another habit to take its place.
Right. That's the problem. All right, so we're going to get to all of that in a little bit here, but first we're going to talk about a lot of different other things that are going on. First off, I just got back from the Relic headquarters in Vancouver, Canada, for their sort of community influencer day. I got to meet Rogers, and I got to meet the guys from Sunday Night Fights, and Helping Hans, and who else? I met all kinds of other people over there. In Complexity, it was an awesome time. The people from Europe all went to a shooting range while they were in town because you don't get to do that in Europe, so they're like, we're going. It was an excellent time, and when we actually got to the studio, I hadn't been there because the one that I went to, I guess they moved studios, so it was a brand new experience for me. And we got to see, we got to talk to the developers, and the QA guys actually came in. We got to play the game, the press copy, the advanced of everybody else before the game came out on Tuesday, and we got to play some special maps. Actually, they had us download a special development version onto the computers that we were on, and we got to play some of the upcoming maps. Now, I did sign an NDA, so I'm not allowed to talk about anything specifically, but I will say that the sort of enthusiasm that the team showed for the game and getting our feedback on it was really high. I mean, they asked us, which one did you play? How did you find it? How difficult? Was it too difficult? Whatever. And we played on one of the maps, and they said, here's what we were trying to do with this map. This map was going to be something where you're going to have to fight on ice, and that was going to be part of the thing. Is that what wound up happening in the games you were playing? So they're asking us all kinds of cool feedback about the specific stuff that's coming up. And I have to say, there's some cool stuff up there. We actually walked by and wanted to stop and look at the road map that the team had on the wall that said, okay, this is what we're going to try to do by the end of June, this is what we're going to try to do by the end of July, and everybody that was there turned and looked up and said, wait a minute, I got to memorize this, they're not going to let me take pictures, and Bobby from Sega is just like, keep walking. They don't want to commit to anything, and who could blame them? That stuff's hard work. So it was a lot of fun. We got to hang out with a lot of great guys, including the Relic guys, Noun and Bobby. Thanks a ton for helping us get out there. I'm going to be playing a lot more Company Heroes 2 next week when I've got a really slow time at work, and then I've got a whole week off the week after that. It's going to be fantastic. So that was my.
I'm going to ask a question that I know all of the people commenting on your videos are going to ask you, Bridger, because you never answer it. Will there be a podcast?
That remains to be seen. But I mean, I don't think I have. No, the problem is I don't have time to do what I did with Tales of Heroes, which was every Sunday night I'd do an audio show for an hour and a half and then a video replay review for an hour. Because at the time I was able to have that much time to talk just about Company of Heroes because I was so freaking involved in it. And I do really like Company of Heroes 2, but I'm not completely absorbed with it the way I was with the first one or the way I was with Guild Wars 2 before and, the first month or two after it came out. But the game certainly has that potential. I mean, when I did Tales of Heroes, it spawned all these other people that came after me that doing the same thing because the game itself has such a great system built in that makes it encouraging and dramatic and fun to watch. So I'll definitely be doing more Tales of Heroes video replay reviews videos for Company of Heroes 2. That's absolutely going to happen. I've already been talking with
maybe
Rogers.
Not a dedicated
not on a regular basis. I'm going to do it when I was like, I don't have anything special to stream this week because there's no new games coming out or I just don't feel like anything else. Let's go play some Company of Heroes and let's find a good replay and get Rogers together. I mean, that's the other thing is Rogers has a job where he's only available some nights, so it's not nearly as flexible as when we were in college is what it comes down to. So that's the main thing. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But what have you guys been playing this week?
Mainly Battlefield 3, getting back into that. For those of you that missed it, there was a $5 Epic sale for Battlefield 3, and been playing a lot of that. Plus, turns out they have a whole bunch of expansions I didn't know were released, so getting caught up with that. But mainly in anticipation for Battlefield 4, which we talked about last week, or 2 weeks ago. It's got the same feel, so I'm trying to get back into that open shooter feel. And then obviously League of Legends, which I'm sure we'll be getting into. So,
all right. What have you been doing, Rob?
League as well. I mean, I play League with such frequency. I always leave it off the list whenever I know I'm gonna be on. But I've been playing Lego Batman 2 DC Superheroes with the girlfriend.
Now that's kind of interesting. I was saying I met all these great people when I was over at Relic. I specifically said helping Hans, and then in the chat he's like, "Oh hey, that's me." Like he just hears his name on a stream somewhere, and he's like, "I'm there in the comments." That was awesome. So Lego Batman, I didn't know anything about this until I started watching this video that you had from Twitch. It's pretty intense compared to what I expected. It looks really fun.
If you haven't played a Traveler's Tales Lego game in a while, this is definitely a good one to pick up. The Lord of the Rings one was also really good. A benefit of the PC version over the console versions is that there used to be 3 sections of Gotham City separated by loading screens, but on the PC version it's all continuous. You don't have to wait. You can just go through this whole open world area, and you can chase that into missions, or you can go after things in the overworld. In the overworld, you can play as any of the heroes you've unlocked, and they invited everyone to this party.
Aha! That's right. It's called Lego Batman like DC Heroes Edition or something.
Yes, DC Superheroes, and you can play as Superman, Lex Luthor, the Joker, Wonder Woman, the Green Lantern.
Wait, you can play as the bad guys?
See right there, Killer Moth.
What the hell's Killer Moth?
Exactly. To let you know how many DC things are in this game, Killer Moth is in a cutscene. And I know people can't hear the audio, but the newscaster goes, "Wait, who's Killer Moth?" Okay, Killer Moth is there as well, apparently.
This actually looks like a ton of fun. Is this on Steam?
And, yes, it is. Also, fully voice acted.
Really?
Yeah, these cutscenes, there's no longer just the Lego pantomime and blah, 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 blah. It's fully voice acted cutscenes. The story isn't a tremendous draw, but it's it's interesting.
Uh-oh, you just walked into a trap.
I got to bring up a game that is the very first game that's come out for console, but I was not able to get my hands on it because it came out on the evil Xbox. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
No.
The Last of Us.
Oh.
Yes.
I watched a number of streams. I started reading reviews.
Wait a minute. I have to interrupt. Why are you breaking everything in here, Rob? Aren't you the heroes?
Haven't you ever played a Lego game? You have to break everything, and occasionally you rebuild it.
Okay, never mind. Go ahead. Last of Us.
So, Last of Us, if just throwing it out there because this is a gaming podcast, and we got to think of our console gamers as well. This is a game that I'm hearing across the board people raving about. There are numerous publications giving it perfect scores.
Wow.
And calling it a masterpiece. And calling it better than Half-Life and better than, giving it those accolades and saying things like that is making me extremely jealous. And I hope that if someone is listening out there, that they think about putting it on the PS4 or PS3, or even consider bringing it to the PC, because it's from first perspective, it looks like just a kind of like a zombie shooter game, but apparently the story is so amazingly well written, and the way the game flows, that apparently is doing really, really well, and it sold a record number of amount. I think it's like 1.3 million in the first week or so. It's breaking all sorts of records and stuff. So I haven't played it yet. I can't give it my own opinion, but if that many different perspectives, I mean, we're talking websites that are normally negative, websites that are normally, that sometimes are a little fluffy. You know what I'm talking about. All the websites together giving it amazing reviews. It's got to be worth mentioning. So I wanted to throw it out there. I know we have a lot of TL members.
I think it's on the PS3 actually, according to their website.
Is it? Because I looked and I couldn't find it. So I was on.
I'm on the website here, and at the bottom it's got a PS3 logo next to Naughty Dog.
Okay, well, in that case, there you go. So for all of you PS owners as well.
Because you got me all excited. I'm like, I finally own the only console that's on...
Here's the thing, Bridger. You and I are both extremely critical, but even the most critical critics out there are giving this game good reviews. So
this is a Naughty Dog game?
Yes.
What is it with them and extreme quality recently? Because Drake's Uncharted is theirs as well, right?
That's right. That's right. They're a PS3 exclusive. That's the other one that's on the PS3 that I can't get. Is the Uncharted.
Every time I was like, the Crash Bandicoot guys are getting 9s and 10s.
Yep. So I apologize. It is on the PS3, but it doesn't change the fact that this game hasn't been played yet, and that is anybody's fault who hasn't touched it yet if you own a PS3 or an Xbox. Because,
Whiskey Jack says that Naughty Dog is a first-party studio for Sony, which makes sense. I mean, if the original Uncharted still hasn't come to Steam, something tells me it's just not going to PC.
No.
You know?
that hurts.
That's really disappointing.
It's selling too many PlayStations.
Yeah. That's the problem.
I don't know. Well, regardless, I mean, everybody at least has a PlayStation or an Xbox. I mean, let's be honest. Most of us gamers use it as a Netflix box. So,
yeah, that's what I do. That's really what I do.
So,
I have a Wii U as well.
Yeah. Regardless, it's on console. Bottom line. And when I was saying that, I'm just saying it's not on PC, because when I think a zombie game, I'm thinking, you have a target reticule, you have typically guns and stuff, and as much as I want to disgrace shooting games on consoles, because I know how superior it is on a PC shooter, I'm gonna go hide behind a rock now. It's a game like that I really wish was on PC. So I plan on picking it up if it turns out it is on PS3. I've just been hearing from other friends how amazing it is, so I haven't really looked too much into it. But just throwing it out there for all the gamers that we're talking to. So,
all right, so that does sound like something that I wish I could get, like the other Naughty Dog titles. All right, so let's move on. To Brett was looking into this. The Ouya is out. Sort of officially had its... Like, is this a press debut? Is that what's here? Has it actually been released?
No, I think the commercial version is out now, because the press versions have been out for a while. And there was apparently a difference. There was also on the Penny Arcade report, I saw a story talking about how people were reviewing it, but it was a developer version and the hardware was different, so people were complaining about things that weren't in the full release. And
actually, looking at this, that's a lot of games that I recognize. I mean, it's got Bard's Tale, Final Fantasy VII's on there.
Well, those games were... It's a case where it was already available for Android, so anything that you could already run on the Android operating system is already a game for the Ouya.
Gotcha. So it seems to... I mean, I have to say, though, that controller does look like it would be really annoying. And the fact that they labeled the buttons Ouya, O-U-Y-A, Get the fuck out. Like, seriously. I want my ABXY. All right?
Come on. You can label your buttons whatever the hell you feel like.
Nah. I'm a grinchy.
What about like X triangle square circle?
Those are terrible too.
That didn't even spell anything.
You have to use 3 syllables to say triangle. That's bullshit. I want a single syllable for my letters. ABXY. Bam. 4 syllables. I can easily... that's communication.
Or OUYA.
Shut up.
All also 1 syllable.
But
I've heard quite a bit of angst about the touchpad in the middle. Apparently, it's very low. Like it's small, and there's very little meaningful area.
It doesn't even look like there's a touchpad in the middle. Right there, here.
Yeah, right there is a touchpad.
Huh. Interesting.
And it's really the only difference between games made specifically for the Ouya and things that were already available for Android OSs. You can leverage buttons and the touchpad if you're developing specifically for the Ouya.
So it looks like it'll actually be a really good device for pirates, according to this article.
In as much as the Android OS is generally open to pirates. I mean, a coworker of mine said something very true about the Android operating system when it came out, and that's that it's not going to attract developers because it doesn't have the same software controls as iOS.
True.
Where iOS has parts of becoming a developer and releasing a product that will help you protect your intellectual property.
But I mean, there's this other article that I was looking at that specifically talked about how there's all these ROMs out there for old classics, right, of all the Nintendo games that people love and Sonics and things like that. And there's tons of ROMs out there. Pirates love doing that stuff. And this game, the Ouya gives you the emulators. You have to get your own ROMs, but it's easy to just install the emulators and then play whatever you want with, like, support. And Nintendo, as a result, hasn't been releasing these same things, the same ROMs that people are looking for. And so this article is actually hypothesizing that the Ouya is just going to take so much potential money that Nintendo could have had because people can just pirate the stuff that they want from the old back catalogs.
I mean, it depends on how many... I own very few emulated games legitimately. I'm going to throw that out there. And I don't know if saying that the Ouya is going to change people's already established habits with emulated games is going to... it holds any water.
All right, well, we'll see how it actually turns out. I mean, it is $100. If you don't have a lot of money, but you want to play some old school games, or some old school style games, because that's what a lot of the ones looked like, then this is probably the console for you. Yes. But if you're not in that category, it probably isn't.
Also of note, if you already have PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 controllers, they do sync with the Ouya out of the box. So you don't have to use their crappy controller.
That's good, because I like my Xbox controller. I'm a big fan. I use it for all the PC games that require it. All right, so yeah, Strizel says the Ouya isn't aimed towards gamers. It's going towards casuals. It's going towards people that already spend a bunch of money on the phone, but would rather spend another $100 on a console that plays the same games as their phone. I think that's really the idea they're going for.
Not exactly the same games.
Not exactly.
Exactly the same games, but you can use a controller to play the emulated games.
There we go.
Instead of using that soft controller on your phone.
All right, so let's talk about the main subject we wanted to get here tonight to talk about, and that's League of Legends. League of Legends is a massive game. I mean, it's the game to end all games, right? It's bigger than World of Warcraft according to Riot. I mean, they've claimed something like 30+ million active subscribers. That number is mind-boggling to me. Well, not subscribers, active players. I'm sorry, active players.
How many of those are Smurf accounts?
That's a good question. Are those multiple people? I mean, you never really can get accurate numbers from people like that.
Well, still, what are like the? And I don't want to ask you for any stats you don't have in front of you, but the metric I would use is logins per day.
I don't know if they've ever released that information. You know, the companies like this are going to hold that kind of information loaded close to the vest. But let's do a quick Google search. Logins per day. And see what happens. Wait. Hang on. I just have to ask. Why is there a picture of Russell Crowe as from Les Miserables, I think. Right? Is that who that is?
The hat is certainly funny enough to be that movie.
When I search for League of Legends logins per day, that's what I get in the image search.
I don't know why you're doing an image search for this in the first place.
I wasn't. I was doing an image search for something else, and I was going to click the web button to go to the result that I wanted, which is the
regardless of the logins per day, though, we could assume that League of Legends is, at the very least, the most popular sporting or esport game out there. That's obvious.
True.
And that you don't necessarily, I mean, the metrics are there for that. You can see by the tournaments, the prize pools. If you took together all of the different prize pools of all the different tournaments and stuff, League of Legends pretty much has more money to be won, more events, more press than pretty much most games, almost all of the other games combined right now. You could even actually, it's even started to take over, Asia and stuff. Whereas that was sort of StarCraft country,
Yep.
So it's done a lot. I believe there was actually a news post on IGN and a couple other websites. It was about 5 months ago because everybody in our TeamSpeak server went nuts about it. Where statistically, a Korean press company that covers esports for StarCraft actually announced that League of Legends was getting more viewers and more organization than StarCraft at that very moment of time. So that was a big deal for all the League of Legends fans. So as far as logins, one could never say.
I actually found some stats that might be relevant here.
Is it from them though, or is it just...
this is a report of stats coming from Riot. 32 million active players. This is back in October of last year, 2012. 32 million active players, and when they say active players, Riot says it's users who have played at least one game in the last month. It's when you hear that 12 million per day that you do a double take, and when they tell you that there's an average of 3 million players concurrently, your jaw hits the floor. That's what he says here. This is from Kotaku. Those are rather large numbers. That's pretty massive. I'm pretty sure that beats everything on Steam combined. Isn't Steam usually about 1 million in the off times and maybe 2 million in prime time?
They actually publicly show that on graphs too. Yeah. You can see it. So that is impressive. To think that this game spawned from a Warcraft 3 mod,
I know, right?
And then spun off to what it is now. But let's also mention though, just for the sake of being fair, that Dota 2 is still considered to be in beta, and there is a lot of support for Dota 2 from companies and advertisers, etc., for a huge launch when it does go public. Even though right now everybody and their brother has a Dota key that they can give away, it's still considered to be beta. If you've logged into Steam recently, you likely have 16 Dota keys to give away. It's kind of silly, but
yeah, they don't have a lot of value at the moment. Actually, no, I was wrong on the numbers. It looks like Steam has about 5 million at the highest point and about 3.1 million at the lowest point, but Dota 2 is actually the highest game right now with 325,000 players at a single moment. That's the peak for today. But
that's what I'm getting at. With that also, you have two other major games, which many people don't recognize. You have a game coming out soon called Dawngate. Have you looked into that at all?
Is that the one from EA? Or is that the other one? Because every publisher at the same time announced, we're going to do a MOBA too. Let me look it up.
Isn't there even a MOBA coming out?
Yeah, there's Infinite Crisis is the DC MOBA. Doesn't Marvel have one too? Let me look. Dawngate is from Waystone Games. Yeah, that is the EA. That is the EA game.
Yeah, I didn't want to say yes or no because I wasn't sure if EA was actually the ones just publishing it or if they were funding it, but I know EA's involved with it, but that seems to be another big one up and coming. And you're right, there are a lot of copycats, and there always will be. And even now, if you log into StarCraft 2, you'll see a whole bunch of copycats that are trying to make the next big thing. It's just in terms of the big players, aside from League of Legends, it's worth noting that we may be here next year talking about Dota 2, which is far surpassed, League of Legends. We just don't know.
I hope not.
Let's talk about the differences. What do you guys know about the differences, the major mechanical differences? Obviously, they have different champions and things, but do you know about the major mechanical differences between the games?
Well, mechanically, Dota. I played a lot of Dota 2 when I was given a key about a half year ago, and Dota 2 is far more based on. How should I word this? It's far more. I don't want to say skill, because then you're going to have people up in arms about League of Legends not being based on skill, because it is. Both of them are. But Dota 2, typically battles go a lot faster. If you have a bunch of items, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to kill an enemy champion if he knows how to play his champion better. Whereas with League of Legends, you're very item based. As you know, if your team's up on gold by 5,000, 10,000, you pretty much won the game. Whereas in Dota 2, that's not the case at all. We've spectated and played matches and watched matches, tournaments, which they are having right now in beta, where it's highly irrelevant, how much gold, one team has over another. Because if that other team has a better synergy down, it's still up in the air. Also with Dota, just like with coming back from the Warcraft 3 days, you have denial, which is a big play in the mechanics. You can deny creeps by actually attacking your own creeps and killing them before the enemy can kill them. So that adds another layer of getting gold early on. But I would say just the biggest thing is that battles typically or skirmishes happen a lot faster. They're a lot more unforgiving, and there's a whole ton of other mechanics, but those are the big ones that League of Legends players notice when they switch over to Dota.
Yeah, the major, like, I did a bit of research on the differences when I was thinking about trying out Dota 2, and what people say is that the major differences are most League of Legends characters have a low mana cost harass ability. And that in the laning phase, a lot of what you're doing is trying to lower your opponent's health to the point where either they go back and lose gold comparatively to you because they're not in the lane, they're losing experience in gold by going back to their base, or they stay and die. That's the choice you're trying to force onto your opponent. You're trying to trade with them in a positive way where you wind up with more health than they do. And in Dota 2, most of the abilities cost a good chunk of mana, so you can't harass nearly as effectively. And so as a result, the fights are all-ins almost every time in Dota 2 in comparison to League of Legends. Again, I haven't played Dota 2. I'm kind of just reporting what I've been reading here. But is that close to what you were going for, Free? Is that the concept?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, there's other little things, too. If you were to ask the general consensus, there's been forum polls and stuff, and I've been linked them. A lot of people will say Dota 2 also has a much higher learning curve, but you could argue that makes it more rewarding once you learn it, but it can be more frustrating for newer players. So there's a big ongoing, and it likely will never end, argument in the communities that League of Legends is kind of the newbie game, where you could play casually, and when you die, you don't lose gold, for example. In Dota 2, you lose gold if you die. It's more newbie friendly, and the skill cap isn't as high. In Dota 2, an individual player that is extremely skilled with his or her champion could, steamroll the enemy team very quickly. And as they die, they lose gold, and your champion gets rewarded more. So there's higher rewards in Dota 2 across the board, and there's harsher punishments as well. League of Legends is, in that respect, far more forgiving. If your whole team dies, you don't lose progress, whereas in Dota 2 you would. So, You could argue it back and forth. I mean, the actual concept of the MOBA, the 3 lanes, there's just center lane, bottom, and stuff, is relatively the same. They don't have, like with League of Legends, the same meta game where you have like an AD carry and a support and bottom and stuff. That's not quite how the game works. But the idea of 3 lanes, a base, and these towers and inhibitors of some sort, that's all there. So anybody can pick up Dota and get used to it. It's just a matter of, learning the items and stuff and how they work.
I mean, I've heard that same argument. LoL is the baby game and Dota is the real man's game and things like that. What occurs to me when trying to look into Dota, the original, and not really getting far, and then when trying, like I said, all right, I feel like I should take a look at Dota 2 because somebody sent me a key, and in comparison, League seems much more straightforward, and it feels more intuitive. I don't know if that makes it easier, but it certainly makes it easier to understand. I don't know that makes it necessarily an easier game to play. It's just an easier game to understand because you don't have to do counterintuitive things like killing your own minions or your own towers. In a game, if you'd never heard of the game at all, and somebody told you to do that, you'd think they were trolling you. Like, you wouldn't understand until they had to go and explain to you why that's a good thing. If you were designing a game, you probably wouldn't want to put something that's that counterintuitive into the game from a game design standpoint. But people who already know that information love it because they get to use it against people who don't. But you're never going to have a solution to this argument. So I just thought it would be interesting to sort of play the two against each other. I prefer League of Legends' more straightforward, intuitive setup. But let's go back into talking more about League of Legends. Did you have any thoughts about Dota 2? I should let you go.
I had one on that point that you just brought up, which is that I'm not sure about this, but I believe that the denying mechanic was kind of like the popsicle. It was an accidental game design decision because it was a Warcraft 3 mod. You could hold down, I think it was Control, and click on something in order to attack things you wouldn't normally be able to attack. And people, of course, when you give them this tool to work with, they'll realize, hey, that guy won't get gold if I do this, and it's kind of one of those things that became part of the meta of the game over time.
Yes, that is my understanding too. I mean, it kind of evolved in the same way that rocket jumping did.
Yes,
and some people embraced it, and I just
skiing
don't like
in
it.
tribes.
Or skiing in tribes, exactly. It was a bug or an unintended game interaction that people wound up liking and embracing instead of asking for it to be fixed. I personally feel I'm glad that League of Legends didn't carry that bug over and copy it, but other people like it. They like the extra, knowledge.
There's something about, like, you on a battlefield, before your enemy can kill your friend, you backstab him.
Yeah.
Just
sorry, Terry.
Sorry, Terry. Your health got too low. I couldn't save it.
Couldn't let you live, man.
You were a liability.
Okay, so let's talk more about League of Legends itself. So now the original Dota was a mod for Warcraft 3, and as a result, it was not easily accessible. That's why League of Legends was made. That's why Heroes of Newerth was made. People were trying to take this game mode that was very inaccessible because you, A, had to have Warcraft 3, then B, had to know how to play custom maps, and C, had to take the time to learn how to play this specific custom map with 1,000 different special rules that are not easy to understand. So League of Legends and Heroes of Newerth were the first two big ones that came out and said, here, we're going to take this MOBA gameplay and evolve it and make it something that everyone can understand. Why did League of Legends succeed when Heroes of Newerth didn't?
I was going to kind of throw in a little history there. Aeon of Strife was the original, the original MOBA. When it first came out, there was a mod or a map called Aeon of Strife, and that was the original 3 lanes, choose your champion and such. But the problem with Aeon of Strife was that in that particular map, guys, I know a lot of people, League of Legends players, will talk about it. You got to pick your champion, which chose basically, they're Warcraft 3 heroes. So you could be a ranged hero, you could be a caster and such, and get a lot of mana. And they that was all standard. But in Aeon of Strife, you got to pick your skills. You had to pick 3 regular skills and then an ultimate skill. And you could choose any combination of these skills across the entire library of skills in Aeon of Strife. So what Dota did, and you're saying League of Legends really flipped it upside down and fixed it, but Dota did that first. Because Dota, basically the developers or the map makers at that time, decided that with Aeon of Strife, you couldn't really be competitive in that map because everybody was just picking the most obscenely powerful skills and picking the highest mana pools and just all going that route. And that's pretty much what people did. So Dota said, you know what? We're going to force players to pick one group of skills so that they're balanced out. We're going to force them to have a more defined route because in Aeon of Strife, the maps were huge. You could jungle for hours and nobody would ever find you. I mean, they were massive. And they basically condensed all of that to force players to run into each other more often. And then League of Legends sort of copied that. I mean, and I'll be honest, they did. So I just wanted to throw that out there. League of Legends didn't really pioneer the MOBA as much as I feel like Dota did in that sense.
No, absolutely. The original, Dota All-Stars, the Ice Frog map is the one that, exactly like you're saying. I didn't actually know about that Aeon of Strife. I was not into the Warcraft 3 modding scene at the time, but the two that sort of tried to make it more accessible to people even outside the Warcraft 3 community is where I was going for.
Okay. Yeah.
It seemed to succeed because whereas the original Dota was this very hardcore experience that took a lot, it's like a super learning curve, right? League of Legends tried to flatten that curve at least somewhat. It made it easier to understand, what items build into what. Like the first time I remember trying to play Dota, like my friend was trying to get me into it in the Warcraft 3 days, and he's like, and then you should buy this and this. And I was like, why? He's like, because you can combine them to make this other thing. And I'm like, how do you know? Like, how could I ever learn that without going and studying this stuff? There's nothing in the interface, right? You have to have a notebook. But League and Heroes of Newerth obviously did this too, tried to flatten that learning curve by taking like this arcane knowledge that was buried within the game itself and trying to present it to you like a normal game would in the UI and tooltips, etc. So League of Legends succeeded and Heroes of Newerth failed. And they both started with a very hardcore audience of Dota players. But League has seemed to, everybody I know plays League. Even people that aren't even gamers. Like, Tibret's girlfriend plays League with us. My wife plays League more than any other game now. Which is the weirdest thing in the world, because she would never even play Team Fortress 2 with us. It's absurd how many kinds of people play this game, and I just can't figure out why.
That's just because of how accessible it is, and they also consider this with Heroes of Newerth. You have to have slightly beefier PC specs, and I know nobody wants to admit that that's a play in it, but it really is. It's very easy to download League on a slower connection with a laptop that doesn't even have a graphics chip in it, and immediately load up League, and it'll run smooth. I mean, I dare say there's not a PC out there that on minimum specs cannot run League, period. And that's really approachable. Whereas Heroes of Newerth, the technology in the game, what it utilizes, the aliasing, etc., is fancier. If anybody wants to argue, Han is better than League, the only solid argument they have in 2013 is that it does look better, because it does. There's a lot of shading and lighting effects that's not in League of Legends. And League is sort of showing its age, which is why, games like Dota, which employ actual physics engines in them, and games like Dawngate coming out and stuff, sort of appeal, but they run into that same issue that they're not as accessible as League. And that's why it's exciting to talk about games like Dota and Dawngate, but they've really got to do something to reach out to that more casual crowd, because that casual crowd does not have a 600 series NVIDIA card, or a graphics card in general. I mean, the large entry-level League of Legends players are the same people who played Farmville, Bejeweled, and they can pick up the game and it's like, oh, I don't have to upgrade my computer to play this, and it's fun.
And it's free.
And it's free, so it's far more accessible to them. Whereas with Dota 2, for example, or some other titles, you have to download Steam. I mean, we think of Steam like it's an everyday thing, but imagine these more casual players. They're like, "What's Steam? I have to download this in order to play this. That doesn't make any sense." And for them, it's not just intuitive like it is for us, for more mainstream gamers. So we say, why is League so popular? Well, that's just the thing. It's just very extremely accessible, and they make sure to make it extremely easy to play as well.
And I think the accessibility Riot's done a really good job of baking in good conveyance of what everything does.
Ooh, nice game design term. Conveyance.
Oh, yes. Conveyance. Because, stuff like when you get stunned, there's a little spinny thing over your head, and they just introduced that new bar that shows you how long you're going to be stunned for.
Yep.
And the game very well uses the fact that it's a visual thing, and it can give you visual cues as to what's going on.
As often as I've said, what the fuck was that? How did that even happen? I've still most of the time subconsciously known exactly what happened to me. I may not have known why, but it does convey what just happened. You got stunned, and then you got stunned again, and then you got knocked up, and then you got dead. Like, it tells you that.
Yes, and if you're wondering, there's that little drop down that says what abilities were used on you, what % of the damage they did, and if you know the abilities, you can say, oh, that one was the stun, and that was why I was on fire. And
and oh, it did true damage. That's why my armor didn't matter at all.
Yeah, it tells you what kind of damage, and the fact that it's called magic damage and magic resist, and armor and attack damage, like the naming conventions are easy. They didn't go and call it like, well, you need to buy
intelligence boosting things only on specific characters.
It's like you didn't need to buy arcane resistance in order to resist someone's spell force.
Yes.
And it seems like it's a little thing, but the fact that it's so obvious is so vital. Like, the game designers didn't feel like and there's a lot of lore and there's a lot of detail put into the game, but the designers felt for a core mechanic they didn't have to go and give something a funky, funny name just for the sake of theme.
Now, specifically, when you have a lot of arcane hidden knowledge that has to be learned not through, that is, super important, but has to be learned through play, you always come up with situations where some people know this important piece of information and others don't. Like, for just as an example, being able to kill your towers in DOTA, or being able to kill your own creeps to deny enemies, or in League of Legends, something like, if you get a double kill in the bottom lane, you go kill Dragon, or you go kill a tower. You don't disperse back into the jungle to get red buff. No, bad newbie. So these pieces of hidden information of what optimal play is, things that aren't immediately apparent to everyone, they create a toxic environment. And that toxic environment is, I know what's right, and it's clear to me, and if you don't get it, that makes you stupid. Completely bypassing the fact that at some point, that person didn't know the fact in question, and can't remember the time when they were a noob.
So I disagree that teaching players optimal play is important.
Oh, I didn't say teaching the optimal play is important. I'm saying when you have a game so knowledge heavy, like what's a good build for an AD carry, and what's this, and how what makes a useful or efficient strategy in this situation. When you have so much complexity and so much hidden complexity that takes so long for a single player to learn, you create an imbalance of people who have that information and people who don't. And for whatever reason, when people have a lot of information that others don't, they want to feel good about knowing it. They want to feel good about being smart, and the best way to do that is to call somebody else a noob on your team who's not knowing it. And it's very frustrating. But so Riot's been trying to address what they call the toxic player problem. And their approach has been, and I've been to some of their presentations at things like PAX East where they've talked about this, they believe that 90% of their player base are not toxic players, but if a toxic player does toxic behavior in a game, he can turn regular players into toxic players. And so if you get frustrated in one game because some guy rants and raves and then rage quits and ruins your chance at winning, then in the next game you're going to be more frustrated and you're going to take it out on the next guy, and it's just a continuing process. Other people argue that there are a lot more than 10% toxic players. What are your guys' opinion? Is Riot's position correct?
I think in any scenario, not just League of Legends, there's more than 10%. I mean, but there's varying degrees of it. You know, you got 12-year-old kids that have been raised wrong and just, you know, and just they don't have a filter, you know, between their brain and their mouth. And that's them. I mean, that's one type of, I wouldn't even say a toxic player. That's like a plague. You know, when you have more older players and stuff that just don't care. I mean, that's another type of toxic player. I think there's different types, and they don't intermingle, they don't interchange, they don't brush off on each other. I think they're oversimplifying it when they say a frustrated player, which in my opinion is one type of toxic player, you know, rubs off on another. Yes, that's true, but that doesn't account for all the other types that go into the game and they live their night and they have a good time that night if they can anger somebody else. You know, there are those types of players. There's a lot of them. We know them as Counter-Strike players. You know,
other people may know them as Halo players.
And I mean, they don't care. It's not a matter of fixing or not fixing or saying, "Hey, chill out, dude." They're good. End of work, end of school, having a good night with their buddies is trying to
with people.
Is trying to anger you and make you rage quit. And if it works, they highlight it, they talk about it for the rest of the week, and you just made their night. That's not the same as a 12-year-old kid that's, you know, doesn't understand the game, so he calls everybody a noob that doesn't do exactly what he says, or he says somebody's hack. I mean, we know that guy. Oh, you're a hacker, you know, in League of Legends.
How did Shen get from top lane to bottom lane in 2 seconds flat? He hacks.
So instead of researching the game, they just assume that the game is against them, you know. But you take all those combined, if you were to put them in a pool, you're not going to be able to fix it. I mean, the bottom line is you're not going to turn a 12-year-old into an 18-year-old. You're not going to turn a Counter-Strike player into, I don't know, I'm not going to go there, but you're not. I mean, they are going to be the way they are. They're going to be the way they are regardless. You know, that's that. Now, dealing with frustrated players, the tools are already there. I mean, if somebody gets frustrated because they keep getting killed, well, like you said, Bridger, when you die, or Tabor, when you die, there's a thing that comes up and explains it to you. Now, it's on your own coalition at that point to say, I'm going to learn what just killed me and do better next time, or I know better how to deal with it. Or you could be the type of player that is like, just immediately X's it out, you know, and clicks the X and doesn't bother to look to see what killed him. And then you type out in chat like, oh, that was so, you know, this or that, and, you know, you hacker or whatever. The ELO system, I know we haven't gotten to that yet, but that's what the ELO system and the league system, or whatever they call it now, is for. It's to separate those two types of players, because you either A, have the player that is willing to learn and learn from their mistakes, and then B, you have the player that expects everything handed to them. And the system separates those two players to a good extent. Now, if you're stuck in what they call the ELO hell, well, I feel for you, you know, because you're that player that just picked up the game, or you're just deciding you want to get into the more competitive side of it, and you have to deal with those players. But largely the game does do a great job, if you look at the broader statistics and not just your own bad experience. The broader statistics say that a player that learns from their mistakes and tries to step up, be charismatic, lead the charge, so to speak, and help others out, is going to move up your ELO rankings. Whereas the player that rages and is, you know, PO'd and everything when he dies is going to start falling down the rankings or stay relatively where they are. So everybody's going to argue like, oh, I got stuck with a bunch of noobs and stuff, and if they continue with that attitude, they're going to still be stuck with noobs. You're still going to hear those same players saying, oh, I'm still in ELO hell 6 months down the line, because they're not thinking positively and they're not trying to be, you know, supportive of the team. Because psychology is everything in this game. It really is, and players don't pick that up. If you go into a game and you are negative, and it's just like, oh great, we have another Caitlyn bottom, it must be a noob. You know that you have people that do that. They're negative, and then they're the same people that are like, oh, I'm still stuck in elo hell. You know, when they open up every one of their games saying, "Oh my God, we have a Teemo on our team," you know, it automatic GG, we lose. You know, those kind of attitudes. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Although
That's the biggest problem with League right now, and it. Go ahead.
I was about to say I'm gonna have to do something surprising for me, and disagree with Freelancer.
But that's why we brought you on here, to Brett.
That's because you're one of those Counter-Strike players. I know it.
I'm not opening up my Steam account
it.
for the public.
He's not denying it.
You have no right to my tax return or something. Political speak. But I don't agree with the number that Riot used, but I agree with the intention of what they said, which is I have seen a number of times in both ranked and non-ranked, one player yell at another player either on their team or the enemy team, and then person A yells at person B, and then person C gets involved and says, "Hey man, stop being such a dick." And then person D, who's friends with person A, who is yelling at person B, says something else trolly, and now you have this big mishmashing, crossing clusterfuck of
and
people.
For a while, it was perfect silence, and everybody was playing the game.
For a while, it was and then one person says one mean thing, and suddenly everyone picks a side in that argument. It doesn't even fall across team lines.
No.
No,
because then, in order to feel better about themselves, they appeal to the other team and say, please report our Teemo, he's being a dick. And then the other team jumps in and says, yeah, he's a bad player, or no, he's doing a good job. And then you have this inter-team fighting over the same argument. And it's a stupid argument because everybody should just shut up and play the game.
All right, so getting to the end point here, you have icons that you can, or little thingies that you can assign players at the end of games, that they introduced in an attempt to sort of fix this. You can assign friendly, you can assign teamwork, and all these little beneficial things, and then you can assign bad icons, or you can praise your enemy. You can say they're honorable or that kind of thing. Do you think that is helping or hurting the situation?
I think it's absolutely helping. Partly because they released some information saying it was absolutely helping. I mean, they said that the number of reports they got in the month after setting up the honor system was something like a good 15% less than the average. Like it went considerable. I mean, it wasn't gone. Like reports were still flying in, but it was a good 10 or 15% if I remember the statistic correctly. I believe that was at the PAX discussion that they had when they were talking about toxic players, and that was a really interesting thing to have. And it's sort of now they have two things. They have the carrot and the stick. Before they just had the stick to punish players for doing bad stuff. Now they have the carrot that says also you should do this to get free internet points and ePenis++. I mean, there was that famous Penny Arcade comic where, they had Gabe and Tycho, and Gabe is like giving him a pep talk. He's like, come on, I know it's not what we normally do, but you have to do this. It's for internet points. And then he's like forcing his hand down to the keyboard, and the final thing is like in League of Legends, he's typing good luck, have fun. Like he's forcing himself to say good things to the enemy team. And that is... I think it actually happens to some degree. I think it has a less of an effect now than it used to when it was really like new, but I think it's still working.
And they're still working on it, which is important.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't just in the tribunal. They made changes to the tribunal because they thought they could do things better. And I bet you we're going to see refinements to the honor system and the tribunal system as time goes on.
Yeah, people like having those little badges. Feorana got one of those badges next to her. I think it was the teamwork one, because she always plays support, so people always give her honor for getting support.
I think covet is the word that you're looking for.
They do. They covet those icons, don't they? Now, the thing that I've always said that what they need to do because the final thing that they've got the tribunal, they've got the honor system, they need to do one final thing, if you ask me, and that is. Right now, you're automatically opting in to hearing what everybody says. I
Untrue.
think Well, sorry, not the enemy team. You're right.
Not the enemy team.
I'm talking about on your own team. So you're opting in to hear what your own team is saying always. I think that they should do what I think this is what Microsoft did on the Xbox at one point. The Xbox said if a player gets muted by a lot of people, he is probably a bad, influence. We're going to make people opt in to hearing him instead of opt out. So by default, he is muted, and you have to specifically say, I am willing to listen to this asshole. And so I feel like they could do something similar in League, except they're probably worried about people, punishing somebody by muting them and trying to get them closer. But I honestly don't think that's going to be a problem, because like most systems like that, if you set the threshold at the right level, I think it would work out. And it wouldn't be a permanent thing either. So I would love to see that, if only because I can't count the number of times that I have been playing and somebody on my team starts to yell, like, stop feeding bot lane or something, and the bot lane starts to yell back. And after the first exchange, I immediately say, listen, both of you, if you don't want to lose this game, mute each other right now and focus.
See,
and they will never listen to me. They never mute the guy that's driving them nuts. I don't understand it.
Well, you're party C in my scenario. You're the third guy. You're the third guy who steps up and says, "You two stop arguing," and then everybody else joins sides.
No, but it works sometimes. Sometimes one of them finally agrees and says, "Yes, I'm just muting this person," and then the argument ceases because you can't have an argument if you're the only one arguing. It's brilliant. It works. All you have to do is mute the guy. And so I just tell him, listen, I understand you guys don't like each other. I don't care whose fault it was. If you guys mute each other, we still have a chance of winning. If you don't, we will lose. There's no question, because if they're sitting there typing, they're not moving to the right place. They're not concentrating on the game. I've probably lost 99% of games where any fight breaks out on my team. It's frustrating. Anyway.
It's a good point, though.
Any final thoughts on toxicity before we move on to the next topic? I want to keep moving here because we got about a half hour left.
It was a good album.
Okay. What now? This is another departure from the classic DOTA system, is the runes and masteries system in the game. And this is something, and not only that, the summoner spell system. So these are the out-of-game aspects to the game, per se. What do you guys think about these? Do the runes, masteries, and summoner spells, do those mesh well with what's going on in-game?
League of Legends came out at the same time that WoW was a big, big deal. So it's no secret that if you look at the talent tree and stuff, it's very similar to how WoW had theirs laid out. And, the idea of masteries was essentially how you would put gems in your gear, so to speak. It just provides another layer to it. Honestly, you look at other games, they're getting even more advanced with it and stuff. League of Legends is actually pretty simple compared to most titles that are offering that sort of system now. I do think they add to the game, though, because as of now, you're limited to just items, weapons without it. And it gives you that sense of wonder about your enemy, It lets you know that if I go up against a mid champ, which I usually play mid, if I go up against a Lux, there's two types of Luxes I'm going to go against, and I never know which one to play as, so it keeps me on my toes. Without masteries or runes, then I know when I face a Lux, I could just look at their items, and I know exactly the math involved for everything I'm doing with that Lux. But because I'm dealing with a Lux that may have any number of things, that behind the scenes, so to speak, I have to sort of play the field and be cautious and be aware. Not necessarily be timid, but just be aware of the fact that this Lux may have a burst setup that I don't know about. This Lux may be scaling AP during the fight, so I have to acknowledge more of the fact that she's going to try to spike me down. The Lux may have a bunch of armor runes, which tells me that I need to get armor pen early on. But I'm not going to know that when I first see the Lux, So it adds that gray area, where it keeps things a little fresh. And of course, in terms of esports and just spectating and just viewing games and stuff, it adds another layer to talk about, And with most games now, you're going to see it, you're going to find them in the games, because we're not happy with simple games anymore as gamers.
No.
We want layers of things to talk about and do and stuff. If we play a shooter right now, we don't want just a shooter where you unlock a pistol and then a shotgun and then a machine gun. No, we want to unlock different types of ammo, and we want to unlock all sorts of crazy different variations.
People like to spend time customizing, and when they're not playing, they like to think about the customizations they're gonna make later. But
the big thing it comes down to, right, is they want to feel like it's their setup, and that's what the Runes and Masteries allow. We live in this age now where everybody likes customizing, like you said, and they like feeling like they have their own identity. And in League of Legends, sure, there's a massive amount of champions, but if I'm playing a Lux or if I'm playing my Talon, I like to feel like I'm playing my Talon. I'm not playing the same exact Talon as this esports guy is playing. I'm not playing the Talon I'm going up against. I'm playing my Talon with my flavor and my setup.
That is a really interesting point, because when it also ties into the professional scene a little bit, because you'll hear about so-and-so's Nidalee or so-and-so's whatever champion. Right. Like players have become famous for playing specific champions in unique ways.
That's true. And there are certain runes setups that like everybody, just the common thing that everybody does with AD casters. They always do this, or with, AP mids, everybody builds this, but a lot of champions do benefit from tweaking very specific values. Like, this champion needs more mana regen, this champion needs more AP straight up. So it does allow for that. It really feels more like, tweaking an engine in your car,
And even a lot of these most recent champions coming out are heavily based on that. They actually specifically design champs like Zac, for example, to break the normal rune mastery mold and have you completely flip upside down, which you would normally use for a tank, for example. Mm-hmm. Also, that we're talking right now, like they've buffed, health setups a lot more. Running a health rune setup is actually viable now, and there's a number of things you tweak. And then there's, talking about AP mids and tops and stuff, there are a lot of champs they're trying to tweak them so that you can't just run a full AP setup or a magic resist AP setup, which is the standard AP mid. You now, like with champs like Akali, or the new APE, or the new, I shouldn't say APE, it's actually just a brand new Yi coming out soon. They're designed to where if you do decide to use the standard setup, you won't be as efficient as somebody that's custom tailored your setup. And that's great. I mean, that's really good. I'm glad to see that kind of stuff and those kind of champs.
So you were speaking about the massive numbers of champions. It occurs to me at some point there's got to be too many champions, right?
No.
No?
No.
You don't think so?
I'm going to say no. Well, I want to quickly address one point from the previous topic about runes and masteries and about what we were talking about earlier about the ease of knowing things. Everyone who plays League, if they have friends who care about them, has had a friend say, by the way, don't buy runes until level 20.
Yes.
It is a secret piece of information that people need to know, but that is not available to them. And it's not like it costs real money, so it's not like Riot's trying to take your money by making you buy cheap runes, because you can only use IP to buy them. Mm-hmm. So why are there still level 1 runes?
Well, I think most people would argue, if you read the forums and stuff, that level 1 runes are actually not that bad to grab. They're literally dirt cheap. Somebody equated it to be less than 5% of the IP that you're going to gain from level 1 to 30. And that percentage is minuscule, and that's assuming you don't use boosters.
But at the same time, aren't they much less effective?
Right, but they're better than nothing, And so when you're going up against other level 18 players that have no runes, you do get that upper hand, and therefore you can win more matches, theoretically, and such and so forth. So the cost versus the benefit you gain, even though if you compare them to a level 30 champion, they're not all that great. When you're facing a bunch of other level 18s on average, it gives you that one up. But level 2 runes, we widely tell people in our gaming community not to buy no matter what, because the cost of those versus the benefit is just not worth it. By the time you can start affording consistent level 2 runes, you might as well save up for level 3. Mm-hmm. And the cost differentiation there is much wider. Instead of like less than 5% of your IP you gain for level 1 runes, you're spending almost 40% of your IP gained for level 2 runes by the time you get level 1 to 30. And there was a bunch of people in threads, and I'll throw it on the notes, that did all the math, and looked at it like, this is the benefit you get from level 1 runes, this is the relative cost. And it was extremely efficient, whereas level 2 runes, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, just throwing it out there.
Learn something new every day.
It's good that Tibbert brought that up, because anybody watching this podcast or listening, thinking about picking up League of Legends or giving it a try, first off, say goodbye to your life. Secondly, I mean, if you've never played League, literally, your next month is gone. Now, if you are, though, the important thing is either save up for level 3 runes entirely, or just buy some level 1s just to get you by, like mana regen and stuff are the popular ones at level 1, and don't buy anything else. Because we don't want to hear anybody that's listened to this podcast say, I bought a bunch of level 2 runes and now I don't have money to buy level 3, because we're going to all facepalm. And all right, so back to the champion thing, Bridger. What were you saying?
Yes.
How many is too many?
No such thing.
I was afraid of this topic when me and Freelancer agreed immediately. But I can still disagree with you, so so the way that you see champions as you're coming up through the ranks is you have whatever is available to you plus what other people have, which is the free week champs. So if you're a level 1 player, the window, I mean, there's an ocean, but you're only visiting a beach.
Okay.
And then as you go on, you're going to see people buy champions that they've played in the previous free weeks, or maybe stuff you haven't seen before. But overall, the rate at which you're introduced to champions is going to be roughly the same if you start with a level 1 account, regardless of how many actual champions there are.
Well, at some point, that's going to ramp up fairly quickly. Whether it's when you hit level 30 or not. If the previous, you had 60 champions at some point when the game, and I think when I started playing, there was probably about 65 or 70 champions.
For my money, the only thing that really affects it is the number of new mechanics that are introduced by champions. So every champion that works in a way that's not like every other champion that you've seen is going to be a problem. But there's a limited set of kinds of CC, there's a limited set of ways that people can interact with you. So no matter how many champions there are, when you see a new guy, you can go, okay, this guy moves me, or stuns me, or snares me, or slows me, or suppresses me, and once you know all the different ways that somebody can affect you, the champion's abilities will become apparent to you very quickly.
That's true.
That's good conveyance.
Yeah, the only thing that I think could fix that and make it even better is Riot Pliz. If I'm on the loading screen waiting for somebody's toaster to load the game, I should just be able to hover over a champion I'm unfamiliar with and see a list of their skills, as if I was in the lobby. Why can't I do that? That seems like it would be so useful to a new player. Like, there were so many times when I was a new player and I was like, I'm on the loading screen and there's this guy, I have no idea what he does. I wish I could just hover over him and get a tooltip giving me a little rundown of what his skills are. Not a detailed in-depth, but just like, this guy has a stun that lasts for 2 seconds and, he needs to be within a short range, or this guy has a speed up that allows him to catch you and throw you to the ground, or whatever. Like, that would be really useful to me. But I think there is such a thing as too many champions. I think you're getting to the point where unless they come up with new mechanics, they're going to be recycling a lot of stuff, and there's going to be champions that are just plain better than other champions, or very tweaked versions of other champions. I mean, there's plenty of examples of champions that play fairly similarly, or have very similar...
especially in the AD carry arena.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of argument over which jumble of the standard AD carry kit's better.
Yeah. And
you got your bursty ability, you got your mobility ability.
Yep.
It's like, do you want Corky's dash or Caitlyn's net or Graves' dash or?
It seems like, and some other people have brought this up too, is there's the sort of superiority of the AP mids of the past is gone to some degree because there's this huge swath of what used to be major dominating characters in the game, but they don't anymore because they don't have a mobility ability. And we've got to find a better way to say that because that is really annoying. But they don't have a mobability. But for example, characters like Vigar, he is an awesome character. He has a great stun that's super useful in team fights. But he relies way too much on his flash to get out of a sticky situation because his stun is such a long cooldown. In comparison, a character like Ahri, her ultimate is an awesome escape, or LeBlanc has a teleport, or any of these other characters that have since been the big mid characters. Vladimir has his pool to get out of sticky situations. And any of the newer characters, like Diana has the dash to catch up to people and things like that. So there's sort of been, the newer champions are designed to have more mobility than the older champions, and it's like putting them out to pasture. And that's why I think there's a situation where you have maybe too many champions, because the older ones that have these very interesting mechanics without mobility are not really seen in competitive play.
That's not always the case.
I think we've seen Riot step up the rate at which they're willing to rework old champions instead of working on new ones.
That's true.
So when they see that there's a deficiency that's been introduced to a character by the introduction of a new mechanic, they will go back and fix or bring up to speed a character's kit. Like now, Karma got a really great total workover. Yi's getting a redo. There's, I think, a list.
Trundle.
There's
Eve,
a list 5 or 6 champions
Twitch.
long at this point.
Yep, Katarina.
Twitch and Evelyn.
Yep. So that's definitely true. But is the solution just going back and making all the older champions have, more competitive mobility kits?
Well, I'm saying that you only have a certain number of programmers to work on the game, so over time, as you introduce more champions, naturally you're going to have to spend more time thinking about the old ones.
And for those of you
who have to consider the fact that the two most popular champions in League do not have any mobility abilities, and that is Draven and Lux. So, it's not always the case, though. Just consider that.
No, that's not true. Draven has a speed up, and Lux has a really long range, which compensates for her lack of mobility.
Well, okay, but a really long range is not a get out of dodge ability like.
But you don't have to be in dodge at all. That's the point.
Trust me, it's not a get out of gank free card.
I agree with you. Yeah. I agree with you. But I mean, I'm
just saying, we were mentioning champs like LeBlanc. You were specifically mentioning like dashes and blinks. The most popular mid champ doesn't have either. So, I don't think necessarily that a dash is super powerful. Like, I guess I disagree with that.
And see, the thing is, there are so many elements that, based on the composition of your team and the enemy team, some of the things that we're saying could be totally invalid.
Fair enough.
So I think how complex the game is lends itself to having a high number of champions, because you can't say that something is bad, because something that's bad in one situation could be great in another.
Well, specifically, so I'll link the post I was referring to that kind of brought this up. Is it introduced me to the concept of mobility creep, which is not something I had heard before, but it seems true in that a lot of the newer champions, I'll throw that in the chat it won't let me do it in the League of Legends chat, but it's called True Mage AP mids really need to be looked at. And the list that they included: Vigar, Cassiopeia, Annie, Brand, Victor, Malzahar, Syndra, Zyra, Xerath, Lux. And he has a bunch of examples of what's wrong with those champions, but specifically, the one that I thought of is that, he says mobility creep has left us behind, saying that a lot of the newer top lane jungle bruisers that have come out have a way to reach the back line. And as a result, the only useful glass cannons are one that have the ability to not only be at the back line, but also get away from the back line because it's so hard and so much people diving. We might be getting a little too much inside baseball, though.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, they just introduced Zach, who has the longest range. I'm suddenly in your face ability in the game.
There you go. Although it does require a charge up, which is a decent counter.
But again, I think whether or not having a true mage is a bad thing depends on the enemy's team composition. And if you're in a game that has, what do they call it? If you're in a blind pit game, you can see the champions that the enemy team is coming out with. So if you know you have a high-risk character like a Vigar or somebody else who doesn't have that mobility move, you maybe watch and don't pick them until you're sure that the enemy team isn't going to be bringing a Zach or someone else who's going to jump your whole line and start messing with your AP carry.
Okay, so let's move on then. What are your thoughts about the price structure for the game? And we covered, League of Legends was our favorite free-to-play game in terms of the business model when we were talking about free-to-play games, but what are your thoughts specifically about League of Legends and how it is priced? They've recently changed a lot of the ways that they're doing pricing. I mean, just in the last year, they have set up a new system so that old champions that, whenever they release a new champion, at least one other champion is going to go down in price, making it easier to get them. And the same thing has sort of been done with skins. They've sort of revitalized. They have different tiers of skins. So the really intricate, amazing skins cost way more than they used to. But the small adjustment skins that are sort of just like, we're going to change the colors here and there, those are much cheaper than they used to be. And the ones in the middle are still in the middle. What are your guys' thoughts on their overall business model now that it's
I think it's completely the perfect way to do it, because not a single purchase made with any real money affects anything in the game as far as gameplay is concerned. You don't have any super buffs you get in game, or anything like that. Skills aren't any different. Everything's the same. If they released a legendary skin that gave you slightly longer range and stuff, that'd be different, but they don't have any of that.
I would argue that when I go up against Zombie Brand, I am intimidated. He is spooky.
The skin war has always been a mental game.
Yeah, like today I had a Teemo game. I was super Teemo top versus a regular Teemo, and I smashed him. And it was completely because I had a cape.
Yes. It was obviously because he could see your E-penis across the lane.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a cape and a mask. That's intimidating for another Yordle. So, of course, I immediately owned the lane and put shrooms in his bush at top, and I had complete control. I was super Teemo. So it did have a play there. But no, seriously, it's not like a lot of MMOs and stuff will release items that give you slight buffs or allow you to do things that other players can't. The fact of the matter is, love it or hate it, League of Legends, if you don't spend a dime, it doesn't take you an obscenely long amount of time to get a new champion or get IP to get a new champion. It doesn't take a long time to get a lot of things. I think roughly right now you play about 15 ARAMs and you have enough to buy a new champ, and that's not bad at all. So, I mean, there's not much to complain about there. It's completely cosmetic as far as what you spend real money on. And I wouldn't have it any other way, in my opinion.
But the only thing where I disagree with that is the limitation to 2 rune pages is really,
lame.
Yeah, because
isn't there a way to IP buy that?
You can buy it with IP. It's 6,300 each. It feels like highway robbery, especially when they say, "Oh, but we're dangling 7 in front of you for like $10." It's like, damn it. Those are really useful to have.
Rune pages, I'll agree with you on.
That's about the only thing that I really
when it comes to that, I mean, it comes down to if you need more than 2 rune pages, you already have your selection of champs that you're developing rune pages for. And B, if you're getting that serious about the game, I mean, it comes to the point where you need to support Riot anyway. I'm sorry, I'm that guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Fair enough.
if you're somebody that is that serious about the game that you're getting to the point where you need more rune pages and you want to get competitive and stuff, it's time to give Riot a little love and say, here's your $5-10. You know, thanks for making a game that just sucked the last 80 hours of my life out. I mean, because at that point you haven't spent a dime, and you are playing something for a completely free game at that point. And for somebody to argue that, oh, rune pages should be super easy to get as well, if they just make everything under that attitude and that mindset, then they're not going to make any money. The developers that spend so much time to create all that stuff for you are not going to get paid. And I think it's wrong. There is a line drawn where you need to support them, you know. And after, you know, games that say, you know, once you reach level 30 and stuff, to get a little bit of extra content, they add a gateway there that involves a little bit of real money when it's been free up to that point. I'm completely for that. Somewhere along the way, you got to put your foot down and say, we need a little love here. And it's about not going too far with that, you know, and I don't think they are with the rune pages. How much RP is it for a rune page?
6,300? Or sorry, RP. I don't know the RP number.
6,300.
That's a lot of RP.
I've actually bought 2 additional rune pages totally with IP.
I think I did too.
So the cost isn't too high, and it's one of those things where I think the equation to look at when you're weighing whether something is worth what they're asking you to pay for it is how many hours of play or enjoyment or thought or how much personal enjoyment time do you get versus how much time it took you to earn that thing. And if like Freelancer said, you know, 15 ARAM games is what, like 4 or 5 hours? Something like that? 3 or 4 hours? To get a not a cheap champion, like a middle range champion, as far as cost goes, that thing that you buy is going to, if you play it a lot, get you many more hours of enjoyment.
Yeah. And it looks like 2,600 for 7 rune pages is what you'd pay RP for. And so what's 2,600 RP? Is that like $30? Or do I have it backwards? 2,800 is $20. So no, it's like $20 for 7 pages. It's probably something I should have spent a while ago. But
that's interesting. I typed RP to dollars conversion into Google, and it apparently thought I meant rupees.
Rupees?
Yes.
Like the Russian currency.
The Indian rupees.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Well then.
I think you're thinking of rubles.
I am thinking of rubles. I'm sorry. I am not good American. So, I had a thought, and it's gone now. Oh! The thing I think that League of Legends succeeds at is something that a lot of other free-to-play games fail at, and that's a lot of games rely on a hardcore small percentage of people to spend a lot of money, instead of trying to appeal to get everyone to pay a little money. You know, the number of people with at least one skin has got to be high. That's everybody spent probably at least
100%.
$10 of all the people that play the game on a regular basis. Probably 90% or more spent at least $10 on it, right? That's a lot of money.
I'm not even going to admit how many skins I have.
That's the thing. Like, you're just gonna, because I don't mind, because I've spent. It's like I've got 17 games, you know, in one here in terms of the amount of hours that I have spent in comparison to the other games. I don't mind spending more on it because I've spent so much more time.
Well, you know how we've had
a subscription.
You know how we've had previous conversations about MMOs going to the microtransaction and how that's working? Well, all of that came from League. You know, every MMO developer out there wants to have a successful microtransaction atmosphere like League does. So League did it right. You know, and there's no denying that. No Dota 2 player can argue that. That as far as business is concerned, they are doing just fine. I mean, when you hear about a $50,000 tournament or more, that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, of a monthly income, you know, let alone their yearly income. Because we were talking, what, 30 million players, right, Bridger?
Yeah.
Something around that. You're saying 90%. Let's just imagine 70% of those players buying one skin. How much money is that?
That is a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. So,
let me punch those numbers into my calculator.
Does it come out with a happy face?
It should. It's what we said. How many active users?
Let's say 21 million is 70% of 30 times, let's say, $10. That is a happy face. Hang on, let me. That's 210 million by itself. Not to mention the people that bought rune pages and champions.
And not to mention guys like, admittedly, me and Tibrit, who have skins for almost every champ we like. So,
well, I can't say that because I have 82 champions.
Yeah, so it's not even counting that. We're talking the base level, just somebody that's casually playing, found a champion they like. I guarantee 50% of all those skins are Teemo skins, and and I mean, just saying, that's $210 million for the casual player, the most casual of casual, buying one skin they like, convincing their wife or their husband to say, "I just want this one little cute skin," and I mean, that's
Riot
amazing.
doesn't have a public offering I could purchase, do they?
So
I'm counting the number of skins I have by looking at my champion page.
So summary here: were they successful with this sales model? Absolutely. Gameplay and all that we could argue to the end of time, but the sales model that I'm not going to say every MMO, but most MMOs are trying to base off of now is trying to base their structure around how League of Legends became so successful. The idea of microtransactions, that was maybe not coined, but that was established as successful in America by League of Legends, and so that's a very powerful thing to say. They, in that sense, you could define them as revolutionary.
Let's see, 6. No. 7. No, 8. 8 skins I have.
So rough guess, I have somewhere in the neighborhood of like 40 skins.
Jesus.
But some of them were gifts, and some of them were freebies. Like, I have a couple.
Yeah, I didn't count my freebies. I think I have at least 10 if you count the freebies.
I probably have 10 freebies in here between, liking Riot's Facebook page or
all that matters is how many
or Christmas.
All that matters is how many Yordle skins you have.
Oh, okay.
One Tristana skin.
There you go.
Right, girl Tristana.
Yep. But to be honest, the only reason I haven't bought more skins is there's lots of champions that I play on a regular basis that I don't own a skin for because I just don't like any of the other skins. Like Volibear is supposed to be a polar bear. He's supposed to be white. Give me a skin where he's got white skin.
You don't like the
fur.
cyborg mechanical Volibear?
No, I don't like that's no. What's that? The new one, right? The Rune Guard. Nah.
The newest one, I believe.
It looks like he's wearing a fur coat. Like a bear doesn't need to wear an artificial fur coat. That's not how it works. All right.
Well, for fashion.
I guess so. maybe that's Rengar's fur. This is the fur of my enemy. All right. Anyway, I think that probably about wraps it up.
We'll end on that note.
Let's go play some League.
There you go. I don't think I've played enough. Uh-oh. There we go. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. Sorry if we didn't talk about your very specific thing about League, but damn, it's filled with everything. There's so much stuff going on here. If you want to talk with us more about League, come find us on the Team Legacy TeamSpeak chat. We're in there playing League all the time. Lots of people would be ready to give you advice and or tell you what's a good build for whatever character you want to play. So definitely check that out. TeamLegacy.net is our gaming community. We're getting ready to jump into Wild Star and Star Citizen when those games come out. But in the meantime, we have a very healthy, active group of players playing League of Legends, and we would be happy to have you guys come join us. If you're just looking for a group of people to play, no drama, no name calling, that's what we try to enforce here at Team Legacy. I am Bridger, signing out for the General Gaming Show. See you guys again in 2 weeks. All right, we're clear.
Got to pop out for the meeting, Bridger. See you.
All right, I will see you later. I'll probably jump in there in a second. All right, thank you to Brett. I am going to go finally play Borderlands with Feo and my brother, because he got me the game for my birthday, which was like a week ago, and we've been trying to get together so we can all play it together, and it's just never been working. But I now have official, if he's online, I hope.
Did he get you the season pass as well?
No, I think he just got me the regular game. Open up my fridge.
Gotcha. Well, if you have the Necromancer or any of the expansions, which it was a pretty good deal for that season pass for how much content you got.
Yeah, I just don't like that you don't know what you're getting ahead of time. Anyway, we're gonna go play that. I'm gonna drop the stream.
Well, now you
here.
Do. They've announced all of the expansions that are.
Now they do, but they give you the option to play. I'm waiting for when the Steam sale comes out and I can grab the whole thing for like 50% off.
I bought it. I was not disappointed.
All right. We'll see. I have to see. The thing is, I bought a bunch of stuff for the original Borderlands, and I never even finished the game, much less got to any of the expansion content. So that's where I have the problem of. But let's see if I can do it this time. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And by the way, on the 9th of July, I am going to be streaming all day Civilization 5. It is going to be awesome. Tune in. Twitch.tv/Bridger15 or the YouTube channel Sound Strategy Network. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.